Hello, Titans fans, and welcome back to the Two Tone Crew. This is episode 140. My name is John Boy. Happy to have you joining us once again. Unfortunately, it's to talk about another opening game loss for the Titans, and Scotty is with me tonight to do that. Welcome back, Scotty.
What's up, John?
Not a lot, not a lot. Got back from Nashville, so I think Jamal and I mentioned last week, both of us actually went down to the game. That's why we weren't able to record Sunday night. Just didn't work out. We hope to eventually get on back on the Sunday night schedule later in the year, but it didn't work out this week. But yeah, I went down to the game, and unfortunately, we all know how it turned out. Raiders beat the Titans 26-16. Honestly, that was the first time I'd been down to Nissan Stadium in quite a while. I was trying to remember the last time I was there. It may have even been the Ravens playoff game when they beat us, when CJ got hurt. You remember that one?
2008, I believe.
Yeah. So it had been quite a while, and there may have been another game in there that I forgot about that I went to, but it had been a long time. So I was anxious to get back just to kind of see what the excitement was like, because I think, everybody talks a lot about how the Titans don't really sell out, or I shouldn't say they don't sell out, but opposing teams fans kind of take over. And so I had my expectations set pretty low going in. And it actually ended up being better than I was expecting. I mean, it was nowhere near the days of Adelphia Coliseum back when the Titans first moved. There was nothing like that. But especially the first quarter, I thought the fans were really loud and into it. And then after that, it kind of tapered off. And there were a lot of Raider fans there, but it wasn't – I've seen it much worse. I'll put it that way. Just on TV, I've seen it much worse. So I was pleasantly surprised by that. And I was fully prepared this week to get on the podcast and kind of take the fans to task and say they need to step up, but it wasn't too bad. And then I can't really fault the fans too much when the Titans keep losing home games. So it's hard to fault fans much when the team isn't going to be able to win these games. So let's get into it. I know you and I have already posted our thoughts over on titansreport.com. Of course, we're the official podcast of titansreport.com. And usually Scotty has his thoughts up pretty quickly after the game, and I try and post some things as well. But we want to just kind of summarize that, recap that in light of what we've learned over the past couple days here after the game, after hearing the coaches talk and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it was an interesting game. I mean, 26-16. If you really weren't a fan of either team, it was probably a good game to watch. I mean, it was a well-played game, not a lot of penalties. Neither team turned it over. I think both teams had a defense going into this game that people weren't expecting a lot out of, and the defenses actually, weren't too bad. So there's a lot more to get into. Of course, when you look at the stats, I know you and I talked about this on Titans Report already a bit, but just to kind of recap for the listeners, it's crazy how even the stats were. I mean, just running down through here at a glance, Raiders had 22 first downs. Titans had 21 first downs. Both teams ran 63 plays. Titans had 350 total yards. Raiders had 359. Penalties. Both teams were penalized 5 times for 49 yards. That's crazy that it was exact on both those things. Time of possession, fairly even, 31-39 for the Raiders, 28-21 for the Titans. And in a game like that, I mean, it just comes down to a handful of these plays that alter the game. And I'll get into the couple that I thought of here, and I know you have a few as well. You probably may even think the same ones, but I especially thought the field goal right before the half was huge. The Titans went down. It was looking like we were going to take the lead. I mean, they were on a really good drive. It kind of stalled out, ended up having to kick the field goal to tie it. So you assume you're going into the locker room 10-10. I think there was something like, 45, 48 seconds left on the clock. And then the Raiders just come down, and that first year kicker, at least at the NFL level, nails a 52-yarder. And so the Raiders go in the locker room with that momentum. So I thought that was one of the first big turning points.
Romo mentioned a few times that they were leaving too much time on the clock right there, and I was actually thinking that myself. I can't remember who the players were, but a couple of receivers ran out of bounds. And I remember thinking, might want to let some time go off the clock. I know you still want to score a touchdown, but I felt like they were caught in between where they needed to use more time. They had enough time where they could still try to score a touchdown. I thought that was kind of a mistake with the clock management right there.
Yeah, so when you mentioned that, I pulled up the play-by-play here. So we'll just start from the 2-minute warning. So we ran Henry and took it down to 152. Then Mariota passed right to Davis. That might have been out of bounds. But that put him in first and goal. So that got him to first and goal at the 8. Then they passed right to Decker. It was just for 2 yards.
And he ran out of bounds.
And then after that, it was an incomplete pass to Decker. And then after that, Mariota scrambled. I don't know if he scrambled. Oh yeah, it says pushed out of bounds. So there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember thinking, they're conserving too much time. And now that I think about it, Romo even said, if I'm the Raiders, I'm going to use a timeout right here.
Yeah.
So that they could get the ball back. And
they didn't even have to, did they? I don't think
no, they didn't have to because
yeah.
I know 2 players ran out of bounds and the incomplete pass. And yeah, that was. I mean, in a game,
Mariota definitely.
In a game this close, like we're talking about, this is the kind of stuff that comes down to
exactly. Yep, those are the little things. And another little thing was later in the game. I think it was the 3rd quarter when the Raiders actually punted and we had the running into the kicker penalty, moved them up 5 yards. They kick another field goal. So that's a 6-point swing right there when really, especially on the second one, I mean, the defense did their job. You can't fault the defense there. They had them stopped. Then special teams rears its ugly head again, and the Titans get that 5-yard penalty. Jack Del Rio says, what the heck? Let's see if this guy can hit a 51-yarder. And he did, and so that was another big swing in the game. And then the other thing was when you look at the touchdowns scored in this game, Titans had just 1 touchdown. The Raiders had 2. So it was really just a matter of converting those red zone trips. The Raiders converted 1 more than we did, and also the fact that they got those 2 kind of not really gimme field goals, but they just got those 2 sort of cheap field goals, I guess you would say, that they really shouldn't have had if the Titans had managed things a little bit better. And of course, the first play of the game, we got to talk about the beginning. Mularkey starts out with an onside kick, and a lot of fans, I think, in hindsight, upset by that. It gives the Raiders a short field. I didn't particularly like it, but I wasn't kind of enraged as a lot of people were. I mean, the Titans recovered from it, and it was all set to be knotted 10-10 at halftime. So, I mean, but in a game like this, it's something you definitely have to mention that gave the Raiders a short field. And so the defense really, if you give them that one, it's kind of a gimme. They had a short field, and of course you still expect them to stop the Raiders, at least hold them to a field goal. But I thought the defense held up much better than I was expecting. Let's put it that way. I don't know how you felt overall about the defense.
I totally agree. And at one point, I remember thinking Adoree Jackson is actually getting the better of Cooper.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually shocked. Once he settled down and started coming into his own, he was actually covering him well. And, that was the matchup everyone was worried about. And once again,
especially with Sims out.
The real issue was the missed tackles and the yardage the Raiders got after missed tackles, and a close game. That stuff adds up.
Exactly. Yeah, missed tackles. If you had to fault the defense for one big thing, I think that's got to be it in this game. Lots of missed tackles, especially on those drives we're talking about there, where the Raiders were able to get that field goal before half. I think Cyprien had a couple of badly missed tackles.
Especially on 4th and 1, he had Lynch in the backfield that would have killed one of their scoring drives.
That's right. Yeah. And I totally agree with Jackson. I've said on the podcast I was really worried about the corners, and I mean I still am. But everybody's kind of been saying about Jackson, he's either going to be really good or he's just going to be terrible. And leading up to this point, I think we were kind of concerned about him as sort of a boom bust prospect. He showed me in this game alone. He covered Crabtree some too. And, Crabtree's a veteran. And like you said, they got the better of him sometimes. But he made enough plays in that game for me to say, okay, this guy, he's going to be able to play. And like we've said all along, he's going to have his fair share of times when he gets beat. But he's going to make some big-time plays. That goal line stand where I think the Raiders had 3 shots from inside the 10 and went to him a couple of times, and he just made a great play on the ball. There's one in particular I'm remembering. He made a great play on the ball. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I think a friend of the podcast, Tom Gower, we've had him on before. He was saying that in one of Malarkey's press conferences, he was kind of hinting that Adoree wouldn't be starting with Sims back and that McCain would be in the slot with Ryan and Sims on the outside. I just can't see him doing that with how well Jackson played in this game.
I think Sims and Ryan will be the 2 starters in the base defense, but honestly, that doesn't matter that much because they're in nickel so much. Jackson's going to be on the field most of the time.
And how about that? It was late in the game, but man, that kick return hurdling that guy, that was impressive. But yeah, so it's kind of weird. I think after a loss, everybody just wants to, and understandably, I mean, as a fan, you're upset and you hate to lose and you want to just lay into somebody and blame somebody. But it's like this game, there's just not a lot of blame. I guess I'd say there's plenty of blame to go around. I think everybody was, the way I described it is everybody was good to average, but we weren't good enough. The Raiders were better in virtually every category. Their defense was a little bit better. Offense was a little bit better. Special teams, a little bit better. And in a game this close, that makes the difference.
I would say the main thing, and you hear this all the time, most teams lose the game. The Raiders virtually did nothing to lose this game.
Yeah.
They didn't turn the ball over. They only had 5 turnovers. They scored
5 turnovers. You mean
5 penalties, I mean.
5 penalties.
They only had 5. I mean, for either team, if you don't have a turnover and only have 5 penalties, I'm going to say you're either team, you're going to win most of those
winning.
games.
Yeah.
Now, the Titans, I have to say that if I'm going to criticize the coaching staff, it's the Raiders were completely prepared to play the game. The Titans made too many mistakes. Like, I don't mind the onside. The only reason people hate the onside is because it didn't work. If it worked, I guarantee, it's gutsy, He's aggressive, all that kind of stuff. They didn't execute it. It was poorly executed. It looked like that, they should have. And then later in the game, this one doesn't get talked about much. They tried to kick the ball on the kickoff to the 1-yard line to pin them.
Yep.
That was a 41-yard, I believe, return by Cordell Patterson that flipped the field right there.
That was big.
They weren't. By the way,
they hadn't done that all game either.
Yeah, and I actually remember thinking during the game, the Patriots kick it to the 1 every time, and a couple other teams do. And it's a pretty good strategy now that you get the ball at the 25-yard line, if you can do it. But you better do it. You better not give up a 41-yard return.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, in the press conference, I didn't see the replay, but Malarkey was pretty adamant that, wasn't it Treyrick that ran into the kicker or the punter?
I can't remember which player it was.
He was blocked into the punter. It shouldn't have been.
I thought so. From what I could see of the replay,
that shouldn't have been a penalty. But I don't remember seeing it during the game, so maybe it was hard to see. But anyway, the Raiders made no mistakes in any of this stuff. The Titans, sloppy tackling, the special teams errors. I mean, I got to put that on Malarkey, and Del Rio had the Raiders, very sharp. And you're not going to beat a team that plays as mistake-free and sharp as the Raiders did. It's just it's hard to do anyway. But also,
go ahead.
It was kind of weird because I actually talked to some other NFL fans that aren't Titan fans, and they kind of just thought it was 2 good teams that played a good game, and they're not as invested as us. So I think, it's no reason to panic. And in fact, after the game and after the day, looking at the division, even though the Titans lost, I felt I felt better about their
Yeah,
prospects of winning the division. So it's
it's
not
kind of
a
crazy. Yeah,
it's
we'll
not a
get to
bad
that for
loss.
sure. No, I mean we chalked it up as the second hardest game on the schedule, maybe the third if you want to say Pittsburgh. And week one, you know. And again, you hate to lose it, especially to an AFC team where a tiebreaker could come down to that game. But yeah, it's hard to get too upset. Now we talked about special teams a little bit. We talked about defense. Let's talk about the offense because
Hmm.
that opening drive, man, I was thinking, wow, here we go. This is what we've been waiting to see. They the first pass probably should have been caught by Matthews. Mario was pressured. I think it was a little low, but you'd still like to see him catch it. And so then they had a 3rd and 10, and I was thinking, oh man, here we go, 3 and out. And then we got that third down conversion. I think we actually ended up converting 2 more third downs on that drive, including the big catch to Davis on the sideline. And then, of course, we know that one ended in a touchdown. And I was thinking, okay, here we go. This offense is going to be something else. And then, of course, we scored 9 points the rest of the game. So, and Malarkey talked about it. Mariota talked about it. That was one area where last year, when they got in the red zone, I mean, you could almost take it to the bank. It was going to be a touchdown. This game, not so much. And there was a couple of different things that played out because I think I said in one of my posts that the offense wasn't as good in the second half. I think it was just they weren't as good at converting the third downs. In the first half, they were converting a lot of third downs, and then when they got in the red zone, they were still getting in the red zone in the second half, but they just weren't able to get a touchdown. And the big one people point to is, of course, the 3rd and 2. I think Superhorn did some analysis on that play. It looked like Marcus probably checked into that run where they tried to run Murray outside, and it was just stuffed the whole way. Maybe they baited him to run that. I'm not sure, but that's something that they were so good at last year, and you hope that they're not going to have a big regression there. But that was, and ultimately that, like we said, the Raiders had 2 touchdown drives, Titans had just one. That was part of the difference of the game.
I think the offense is pretty fascinating right now because we are watching them switch from the power heavy set to the more the spread passing that people wanted. And I think that's going to come with some transitional problems.
Yeah.
You know, they're still trying. They're not running the ball as well. I think it puts more pressure on the offensive line to pass block. Mariota's now got the freedom to change the plays of the line. Like I think Superhorn did a great job on that, by the way, because he also pointed out that Romo saw the same thing Mariota did at the same time, and literally,
I didn't see that part.
yeah, he pointed out that during the broadcast, Romo said, which by the way, we could talk about Romo. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it
He
was.
he said something to the effect of, "Look for him to check it to the run or whatever." Because he's counting
Huh.
the defenders on the right side, just like Mariota's. You know, they see the same thing. They're both a quarterback.
Yeah.
And literally a second or two, Superhorn said that then you could see Mariota changing the play because it's a numbers game. There's more blockers on the right than the Raiders have over there. But
Yeah.
that's another thing. I'm pretty much worried that DeMarco Murray could be pretty much finished as a good running back.
Yeah, it was like you said, there's a lot of moving parts here. The Titans, I think even Jamal, and he's not here tonight, but to give him credit, I think even he would admit that the offense is definitely changing. I don't know that he would
Oh,
say it's changing as much as you feel like, but they clearly were running more big receiver sets. I mean, they lined up 5 wide a couple of times in this
they
game, which
they played three receivers. I think it was 72.6% of the time
oh wow.
in the
Yes,
game.
I saw Tom Gower. He was doing some stats on that too. I think they played more three receiver in the end of the near the end of the game. I can't remember if you're friends with if you follow Tom on Twitter, check that out and you'll be able to see because I was tweeting at him at first. He had this high number and I said that seems pretty high, Tom, and he said then he came back and corrected it. I think it was something like 5 times they had three receiver sets in the first half, and then they upped it a lot. But yeah, so there's lots of moving parts. There's definitely a changing the offense. Then you got Decker coming back from injury, who was clearly rusty. I'm not sure what was going on there. He did not look like what we were expecting. And Davis made some spectacular plays. I don't think anyone would deny that. I was thrilled. I mean, I was losing my mind that first catch he made. I happened to be sitting right on that side too, like almost right at the 15-yard line. And I was just, there were some Raider fans by me and I was just losing it. But he clearly is still learning the offense too. He missed some blocks. He one time came out of his break way late and the ball was already there. He turned around and the ball was past him. So there's definitely a learning curve for both him and Decker, it seems, coming back from injury. Then you've got, like you said, DeMarco Murray. I don't know if it's just father time catching up with him as it does all running backs or if it's part of the injury. But Henry looked better in this game. And that, I think everybody was pretty much admitting that when Henry was in there, he looked better. And, yeah, they just couldn't run the ball. DeMarco had 12 carries for 44 yards. Not terrible, but he had that one big one. He had one 21-yarder. And I think you even pointed out he didn't exactly look that elusive on that one.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that was kind of more eye-opening than the losses.
Stuff. And then Henry only had 6 carries, but he had 25 yards, so he was over 4 yards carry. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see. I don't think we write off Murray yet, but let's let this play out over the next 2 to 3 games here. And if he's still looking like this, then we might see that change over to Henry much faster in the season than maybe people were thinking. But it's kind of funny at the end of the day, Marcus, the old reliable targets of Rashard Matthews and Delanie Walker ended up being the leading receivers. It was close. I mean, Davis had 6 catches, 69 yards, Rashard 5 for 71, Delanie 7 for 76. But yeah, and I think you pointed out in the thread, it was hard to keep up with the game thread actually while I was at the game. But I know somebody pointed out that they need to target Delanie more, especially in the first half. He was not getting many looks. And that guy, with all that we've added, he is probably very well our best weapon, even still. And in the second half, you saw them go to him a lot more. He had some great catches in the second half.
That was supposed to be the Raiders' weakness, too, is stopping the tight end.
Right. Yeah, so like you said, though, to kind of bring it back in full perspective here, when you saw what happened around the division later in the day and at the same time as our game, it's hard to feel too upset about the Titans' position. I mean, I would take our 0-1 team over any other team in the division because they've got some
not even
really
close.
Yeah, it's not even close. I mean, well, let's talk about the Jags because that's our next opponent, and they had an impressive performance. They just absolutely dominated the Texans. Their defensive revamp, it seems to be working, at least in week 1. They had 9 sacks? I mean, they were just
10.
Demolishing. Was it 10? Yeah.
It was 10.
They were just destroying the Texans quarterbacks. And on paper, everybody said that all offseason, the Jags, this defense could be a really, really good defense, and they showed it this week. But then you go to the other side of the ball. So even if you'd say, okay, yeah, I would take their defense over ours, their quarterback situation is still a mess. I mean, it's a big mess.
And their offensive line. And they lost Allen Robinson for the year.
Right. So they lost their top receiver. Was it Hearns or Robinson? I always get him confused.
It was Allen Robinson. He's by far the better of the two.
Yeah, so Hearns is like the
he's their Allen Robinson is their Corey Davis. He's the X receiver. He's the big guy, they're not replacing him.
Oh yeah, exactly. So yeah, he's done for the year, and then of course you got Bortles. I mean, basically in this game, he just had to not screw it up because the way their defense was playing.
And he still didn't play well. I mean, his numbers were pedestrian.
So we'll talk more about them in a second because that's the next opponent. But then you got the Texans. I mean, one thing after another is going wrong with them. Is Watt playing? I mean, he acted like the finger thing was no big deal.
He played. By all reports, I barely watched any of it, but he did not. Him and Clowney both were blocked fairly easily by the Jaguars' offensive line, from
which
everything I
isn't supposed
read.
to be that great. Yeah.
Right
And
now,
then,
I do think the game changes when the Jaguars get up and gives them a
oh, yeah.
big advantage, and they ran the ball a lot. So
And then,
I wouldn't throw dirt on Watt just yet.
oh, yeah. And today, Cushing got another suspension for the PEDs.
That's hilarious.
So he got the 10-game suspension this time for the second offense. And then they've got a crazy quarterback situation. They're switching over to the rookie Watson. He's going to start Thursday night. I think they have something. I saw 5 players in the concussion protocol this week.
3 of them are their top 3 tight ends. They have a terrible offensive line, and they don't have a tight end that's probably going to be active tomorrow night. The game's tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're in a world of hurt as far as blocking goes.
And then last, and quite possibly the least talented team in the AFC South, the Colts absolutely destroyed by one of last year's worst teams, the Rams.
Oh,
Would you even bring Luck back
I posted
this year?
I posted today that I would put him on IR.
I mean, why would you subject him to that? If even with Luck, I mean, that guy elevates a team like few
He
other
could.
players can.
I doubt he could elevate this one.
That's where I'm going. I doubt very seriously, and he very well may get injured seriously again behind that offensive line. So
The management of the Colts is, I mean, I can't explain it. It's people should be getting fired for how do you get to this point? They had to know that Luck would miss a lot of time, whether they admitted it or not.
yeah,
And how do they not have a quarterback? Even if it's some Brian Hoyer type, or
exactly.
you cannot go into the season with the 2 quarterbacks they have playing a bunch of the season.
Yeah,
In fact, all 3 other division teams, Bortles and Chad Henne, were back and forth. Basically, Chad Henne played so bad that they had to give Bortles the job back. And they're going back and forth on Watson and Tom Savage. I mean, the other 3, that's why the Titans should win, because we have Mariota, and they have just the biggest mess in the league.
yeah, yeah. Until the Colts get Luck back, they're not. They probably won't win a game. Seriously.
They also probably have the worst defense and the worst pass rush in the league. They have no pass rush at all. None.
So I know you're going to hold Jamal to his Texans prediction about the winning the division
every single week.
And they could, of all the teams, they could get it turned around probably the most.
Did you see their schedule?
Oh yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah,
they're on the short week against.
They're not turning it around. Their schedule's too tough.
So let's talk Titans and this week's game against the Jags. I mean, the reason this game is so important, it's really hard to start a season 0-2 and come out of it. I mean, teams do all the time, but you see the stats. They pull them up every year about a team starting 0-2, how hard it is for them to make the playoffs. Not to mention it's a division game in a division that is very clearly winnable at possibly 8-8, 9-7. We'll see how it plays out. 9-7 won it last year. And then you got the Seahawks right after this, which I think most would say is our most difficult game of the year. So you really don't want to start a year 0-3. And not saying the Titans can't beat the Seahawks. We'll talk more about them later. But this Jags game is just one that you have to have. If we are the premier team of the division, which I think by most accounts the Titans were the preseason pick to win the AFC South, then this is somewhat of a statement game. The Jags destroyed us last year. Our playoff hopes, destroyed our playoff hopes. That's where Mariota was injured. And now you come back, you go to Jacksonville. They're flying high off of destroying the Texans. It's a game you got to have. And I certainly think and hope that the Titans are going to put up much more of a fight than the Texans did, if not for any other reason that our offensive line is quite a bit better than what the Jags saw this week. So, and I think, honestly, that may have been the best thing to happen for the Titans, because there's no doubt that they're going to be taking the Jags seriously now because of how well they played. in that game?
I think not only is the division winnable, it's almost not acceptable if they don't win it.
Really, yeah, that's
I
what I
mean,
meant.
if they don't win the division, I'll be upset. And barring some
Big injuries, yeah.
big injuries, stuff like that. But the Jaguars, they jumped on the Texans early. I mean, their defense is legit, no doubt about it.
Hmm.
But the Titans are a much better overall team, and Mariota's much better than Bortles. So as long as they don't turn the ball over and you know keep this, I don't think the Jaguars are going to be able to mount much offense. I don't think Fournette's going to. He didn't even have that great a game. He had 100 yards even, and I think he had 27 carries. So they were basically just running him into the line while the defense teed off on the Texans. So I
Yeah,
wouldn't be surprised if the game's not a lot different for the Jaguars when they don't jump out to a big lead. But we can't let them get another big lead. They got a big lead last time, and that's basically what they
right.
did to us is what they did to the Texans.
Yeah, yeah. I honestly I didn't know who was favored. I just pulled it up. Looks like the Titans are a 2 point favorite. So,
They opened as a 1.5 point favorite, I saw, which kind of made me
mm,
cringe a little bit. That's scary. But
so Vegas wasn't too, and it's at Jacksonville. So usually the home team, if they feel the teams are even, they kind of get a 3 point
right.
spot.
Another thing about the game, and this goes to this one too, is a very promising thing about the Titan game was you can see that they're going to be a lot better later in the year. Corey Davis, Jackson, Jayon Brown, these guys already flashed major potential in the first game, and they're going to do nothing.
Yeah,
And he's going to get to work with Decker and Corey Davis. So as long as they've got the Jaguars in week 2, and then in week 4 they got the Texans. As long as they can come out of the first month with the 2 division wins, which they should win both those games, they'll have time to get better as the season goes. And
yeah.
so I don't think the loss last, but a loss this week would be way more devastating than the Raiders loss.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, pulling up the Jag stats. Bortles only threw. He was 11 for 21,
Oh yeah.
125. He did have a touchdown, no picks. So I guess the best thing he did was not turned over. Yeah, it was pretty much just don't mess this up. But yeah, they ran Fournette 26 times, so he was under 4 yards a carry for his average. Ivory actually had more yards per carry. He carried 9 times for 42 yards.
You start putting them in 3rd and long and even get a lead on them where Bortles has to throw the ball and their line has to pass protect. One thing you saw in week 1 around the whole league, and I argued this back when we were doing all the Chris Johnson debates, if you can't pass block in the NFL, you can't run an NFL offense, period.
Mm-hmm.
And, Seattle, the
Yep.
Texans, uh, the Jaguars won the game, but their line's pretty much the same. You just really have no ability to sustain offense, and that's where the Jaguars are, and the Titans have to make sure they keep them in that position.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Like next week when we start talking about the Seahawks, that's why I give the Titans a chance in that
Mm-hmm.
game, is because that line is so bad.
It's probably the
Yeah. So
worst line in the league, really. I mean, I watched a lot of that game, and Russell Wilson's actually not getting enough credit for how
no, yeah, it's
it.
amazing.
If someone like a non-mobile guy like Cousins or Brett, he would have taken 12, 13 sacks in that game.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're still cautiously optimistic about the season. This loss doesn't do much to damper thoughts on the overall season. Like you said, this week is the far more important game for the Titans. And if they lose this game, then they're going to have some deep searching to do about what kind of team are they, or are they going to be this year?
Even
So
if they lose, they'll probably just win the division at 7-9 or 8-8.
I hope so. I hope we win it at much more than that. But
Yeah, I do too.
yeah, so like you said, after the Jags, it's the Seahawks at home, then at the Texans, then at the Dolphins, then Colts, Browns. So this little beginning stretch here is by far the toughest stretch. I mean, like you said, things can change as the year progresses, as teams get better, teams get hot, and things like that. But right now, this is the hard part of the schedule. So,
Well, and they still need to come together and form their identity. They definitely struggled with. By the way, I looked it up. They were 76.2% of the time they were in three wide receiver sets.
oh
And
wow,
to add to that, Fowler only played 3 snaps, and they only used like Kelly on the line. Like I want to say it was 5 or 6 times total. So they clearly did not try to do the heavy stuff they did last year.
yeah. So, what do you think the game plan is against the Jags? I mean, on defense, it's obviously stop the run.
Yes.
Probably load the box and try to stop Fournette and Ivory.
I think mainly just not beat yourself, force the Jaguars to drive the ball. And I mean, their defense is the real deal. So I would definitely play it closer to the vest and try to
Don't take too many risks.
play more conservatively. I was actually complaining because they ran the ball too much on first down, but you got to change this stuff up for each opponent. And
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think you definitely want to make Bortles beat you, and the way to do that is to not give the Jaguars any defensive scores or turnovers or anything. So, and they can't afford to go 0-2. So, you still take your shots and let Mariota do what he does, but he might even run more in this game too. I wouldn't be surprised because the Jaguars play a lot of man coverage. Mobile quarterbacks get a lot of yards against defenses that are playing man coverage because they're backs to the quarterback. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't
that's
be
where he had
surprised if he had, yeah,
that
exactly, the
big
long
run.
run. Yeah.
Hmm.
Wouldn't be surprised if he didn't have 6 to 8 runs in this game. And I would expect something like 20-13.
So sounds like you're still feeling confident. Do you think Titans get the win?
Yeah, I think the Jaguars are probably something like what the Titans did to the Chiefs a couple years ago when everybody, they just steamrolled the Chiefs, and a lot of weird stuff like that happens in week one. And the
That's
Jaguars are
right. I remember that.
the Jaguars are still the Jaguars. They still got Blake. I mean, they benched their quarterback a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
They've got
Yeah, if
serious
we can get
problems.
him to make some mistakes this week, that's the thing that could tilt it in our favor. If we can get him to make a mistake.
Shore up the tackling for sure, which I'm sure they'll do. And they just need to get through this stretch and start getting in sync.
Yeah. Get the identity of what the offense is going to be this year. And what do you think they're going to do as we kind of wind down here? What do you think is going to happen at safety while Cyprian's out? Because do they move Byard back into that role, or does Dick LeBeau want to keep him in the back?
I heard Greg Cosell talking about this just today. Now he said, which he's guessing, he doesn't know. He thinks Byard will come back to strong safety and Cersei will play free safety like he did last year, but I kind of don't think so. I bet you. I bet you they leave Byard at free safety, but according to them, which if you believe it, supposedly they're interchangeable anyway, so it shouldn't matter that much anyway. But against Bortles, they might have both of them up front to the line of scrimmage anyway
Yeah, it's
to
possible.
stop Fournette and play more. I mean, they're going to have without Robinson the downgrade in receivers from the Raiders to the Jaguars is massive.
Oh yeah. I mean,
So
yeah.
I would guess that Cersei would play more up front, but who knows? We
Because
know that.
Cersei supposedly he's played both in his career too. So I
You know
agree.
what?
I
You
really
know
want to
what?
leave Byard
I might
free.
backtrack. I might backtrack in mid sentence. The more I think about it, the, the Jaguars are clearly going to try to run Fournette, and perhaps you want Byard up there closer to stop the run from strong safety. So, and without the passing threat, the Jaguars don't have. Maybe you're better off having Cersei back deep
Could be.
because
Yeah.
you could get more out of Byard up close to the line of scrimmage, stopping Fournette and blitzing. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't do that, at least for this game.
And it'll be interesting to see too with Sims back, so the cornerbacks will be at their full health. What they do there with Adoree looking so solid in week 1, getting Sims back, still got Ryan. And I think Ty Smith has a hand injury. I don't know if he's going to be out or not, but then you've got McCain. So, yeah, I still think the Titans are going to win this week as well and hopefully get things turned around. So if they don't win this week, then we can start worrying a little bit more. But for now, I'm going to stay positive. And anything else before we wrap up here? We thought this would be a pretty short episode this week. So
I just would say that my season predictions have not really changed much after that game. I think they would have beat most teams if they would have played most teams last week. So no big deal yet. I mean, if they lose to the Jaguars, then we'll be on here talking a different thing. But
that's right. All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. This has been Two Tone Crew, episode 140. You can find us on iTunes, Android Market, Stitcher, pretty much any podcast service. You can find us on there. Go ahead and make sure to leave us a review. Helps other people to find the podcast. You can find us also in a number of different places online. TitansReport.com is the main place. You can find us on Twitter at Titans Report. You can always call and leave a voicemail as well, 615-900-0282. That's 615-900-0282. And if you do leave a voicemail, just hit us up on Twitter as well and let us know that you left a voicemail so we can be sure to check that. So thanks so much, guys, for listening, and we'll talk to you again very soon.